We would like to welcome the newly arrived devotees to Sri Gita Nagari-PA. Sri Gita Nagari-PA Ki. And especially His Grace Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu. His Grace Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu served for many years in ISKCON as a GBC, as temple president in Philadelphia, and we had the distinct honor and pleasure to serve with him for 10 years as he was a GBC here in Gita Nagari. He is extremely scholarly, and at this point in time in his service to Srila Prabhupada, he has an opportunity to do what he is very, very good at, and that's writing for Srila Prabhupada, and he has written this wonderful offering, and he's going to actually express this offering today. The founder, Acarya of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada. But before he begins, also we want to actually thank the devotees who have been leading kirtan. Sri Rupa, where's she? Sri Rupa? Right, back over here hiding. What an amazing voice he has there. Strong voice, big voice, such a little body, but very big voice. And let's see, Subal Prabhu, leading kirtan this morning and yesterday. Thank you so much, Subal Prabhu. And the devotee Tulasi Puja this morning. I don't see him. And also yesterday's Nishringa prayers, the youth that led them. Where is she? Wow. Thank you so much. Such a wonderful kirtan. I'm always inspired and impressed by the youth who actually lead kirtan. They have such a taste for the holy name. You too, Subal Prabhu, your youth also. You don't have any gray hairs or anything. You're a senior youth, but your youth also. So, thank you so much, and we'd like to welcome His Grace Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu. His Grace Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. Vanchkalpatrubhyas Jata Krishnabhudhyeva Japatipanam Bhavaneki Vaishnava Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Pranamani Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharane Divishesha Sunyavadi Pascharacharane. So, to talk a little bit about this booklet, I guess we can call it a booklet. And there are copies out there, and it's free. I was assigned the topic of on the GBC. We had different committees. This was the Prabhupada's Position Committee, and I was asked to do some research and write a paper. Famous about Prabhupada's position. This was the committee's name. And so I started to do it, and you know, the word founder Acarya is the one that's really very strictly denotes, points to his position. So when I started researching it, I had assumed, I looked at my early notes recently, that Bhaktisiddhanta had that title. And there was a big surprise in store for me because he didn't. The way I found this out was Bhaktisiddhanta, the Gaudiya Math had a magazine, started I think in 1926, called The Harmonist, an English language publication. And a devotee had made a facsimile edition of it. It was like a block of books this long. because it came out. It was an English language publication. They started an English language publication. Actually, they took Sajjana Toshini, Bhaktisiddhanta Bhaktivinoda Thakur's magazine, which was his main preaching organ, this journal, and it was in Bengali. They turned it into an English language publication and said that the Harmonist is rough translation of Sajjana Toshini. And so because Bhaktisiddhanta says what he did this, changed it to English, because he was intent upon world preaching. And English was the medium for that. And so this periodical came out first monthly and then twice a month. So it was going on for quite some time. And so I had editions of it. So I started to read it, and I discovered that Bhaktisiddhanta didn't have the title Founder Acharya. Now we all know, we were there at the time, at a certain point Prabhupada really was emphatic about this title, that it should always be there on all our letterheads and all our signage and all of his books, precise, hyphenated. It's an interesting word, right? English, Sanskrit, hyphenated compound, Founder Acharya. So it was very important to Srila Prabhupada. So I just assumed Bhaktisiddhanta. He didn't. So there's a mystery. And well, the thing was, I had so many pages of the Harmonist. And if I say he never had the title, and it shows up once, I'm wrong. So then I had to almost look at every page and record what he was called. Well, he was called the Acharya of all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. He was called the President, because they had an organization that was overlapping with the Gaudiya Math called the Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha, and he was the president of that. He was called the president, and he was called the Acharya, and the Acharya of like all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Just Acharya. And eventually he had a hyphenated title, generally President Acharya. So, not Founder Acharya. But then I did find two places, two articles, one article and one at a little short notice, very late, one 1930, one 1936, in two places Bhaktisiddhanta is referred to as Founder Acharya. Not by him, actually by Nishikant Sanyal. But and the last one was the very last issue of the Harmonist that came out before Bhaktisiddhanta passed away. But he never had the title. So there's a mystery. Where did it come from? What did it mean? So I started to, you learn, I have a PhD, and one thing that getting a PhD teaches you how to be obsessive compulsive, and if you've been through that, you have to look at everything, read everything, find everything, and you get to turn what is usually a neurosis into something useful sometimes. So anyway, I then discovered that there was another very big English language publication of the Gaudiya Math. And Prabhupada had referred to it, and early back to Godheads, they published some articles from it. Prabhupada said it very much authorized. It was written by Nishikant Sanyal, a professor of history at Ravenshaw College in Cuttack, and who was Bhaktisiddhanta's right-hand man for English language preaching. And he was the de facto editor of the Harmonist. The actual editor of the Harmonist was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He always was known as the editor. Even when his activities are being described in the Harmonist, he was the editor went here, the editor went here, the editor gave initiation. But his second man and the de facto editor was Nishikant Sanyal. His name was Narayan Das, not Narayan Das. That's right. So he was. So he had written this book called Sri Krishna Chaitanya, an English language book. I tried to get a copy of it. I ordered it from, I ended up one that was from the Gaudiya Math in Calcutta, and it was a modern printing, a fairly recent printing, and had been edited. So I wanted the original. So finally, through interlibrary loan, we managed to get a copy of the original. It came from England, and it was one that was produced. It was written. It was published in 1930 by the Madras Gaudiya Math, and it was a big book. It was like some 900 pages. And it was called Sri Krishna Chaitanya, but it was about 75 pages before they got to that. It was written by Nishikant Sanyal. His name was in the beginning. There was a preface by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The only thing in Sanskrit, and it was in Devanagari, were pranam mantras of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. That was not in English, nor was it translated. And it was written for a very high level of writers. So I started to read this book, and before you got to Lord Chaitanya, by the way, one thing that was very impressive is it was in good shape. I mean, this was one of the original copies from the library. See, when the preachers left, they left actually in 1933 to go to England. He sent 3 preachers to England. Bon Maharaj, and he was the main preacher. They had the book with them. They actually had to. They didn't leave until the book was all ready. And for something that was published in India in the early 1930s, it was first class. Very good paper. If you've seen the books that Prabhupada did, the paper's all flaking off already. First class binding, the original binding was there. It was a very sturdy binding. And it was also impeccably edited. I couldn't find a typo anywhere. Obviously, they wanted to make a very big impression on the English people, and so they made a book that was impressive and not easy to read either. It was like hard, it was written for a very high level of people. That was the Gaudiya Math's idea, that they were going to preach to, that Krishna consciousness would be appreciated by the most educated and cultivated people. That was the expectation. Because even Prabhupada's, you see in the original preface that he wrote to the Bhagavatam, he thought it would be appreciated by the intelligent people. That's not who came, but that's what he was expecting. Anyway, so this book was, a lot of effort was put into it. Anyway, before they got to Lord Chaitanya, there was chapters called The History of Atheism, meaning Buddhism and other things, also Greek and Roman philosophy, Western philosophy, and then a history of theism. And in the history of theism, he's talking about the Vaishnavas. And there the term founder Acharya shows up, just exactly as we has now. The English hybrid, Sanskrit even, English hybrid compound. The founder Acharya was the term of art for Ramanuja, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, and Hridayvida Madhva. The Sampradaya Acharya, those four Sampradaya Acharyas, they were founder Acharyas. That was the term of art that Nishikant Sanyal used for this book. And then I thought, wow, if these people are the founder Acharyas, Bhakti Siddhanta didn't have the title, then what was Prabhupada doing suddenly becoming the founder Acharya? That means he's on the same level as these four. And Bhakti Siddhanta didn't do it. Now you have a real mystery. What does it mean? So in the course of investigating this mystery, I found out so many things that I didn't know. And so that revealed so much light not only on Srila Prabhupada, but on Bhakti Siddhanta, on Prabhupada's relationship with Bhakti Siddhanta, and the meaning of Srila Prabhupada for us. It really, and I spent 5 years working on this. And if you see a little book, it started out, you'll see this book, it has a very short little essay, which is about 5 pages. And I wrote that first, just on some inspiration. I gave it to people in my committee. They said, yeah, this is great, now write a commentary. And this is the rest of it. And I just didn't expect that to take so long. But you can see why I had to look at this other book, and anyway. So many things I found out. Where did this come from? Well, so this is the title. This is what founder Acharya means. The 4 founder Acharyas for the Iron Age, he talks about. And what do these founder Acharyas do? Well, one of the things they do is they preach against the atheism talked about in the previous chapters. Atheism is Buddhism and Mayavad philosophy. That's atheism. That's the thing. And they established Krishna theism as the actual purport of the Vedas. They wrote the understanding of Vedanta Sutras of Vyasadeva in a theistic manner, showing that Krishna is, in Prabhupada's phrase, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Bhakti Siddhanta, another thing that happened while reading the Harmonies is I got a feeling of what the Gaudiya Math was like when it was healthy. And it was impressive. It was really impressive. It expanded very fast with this incredible energy. Because starting in 1918, after 15 years, they had, 60 temples, more than 60 temples all over India, and even a couple in Burma. And in 33, they had dispatched the missionaries to England and were going to build a temple there. The Maharaj of Tripura was funding a big chunk of it. They were really set to go. They had the books written in English language. They had some expert preachers. I've learned from reading these things, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was planning to go himself. He was planning to go to England. I think when a temple would have been established there, he'd gone to England, and then to America. That was his plan. And so, and just the vibrancy, the enthusiasm, the confidence that you see in the harmonists was fantastic. And then it crashed. And Bhaktisiddhanta left, but it started crashing before he left. Because there's articles in the harmonists starting in 1930 to try to explain certain things about how the Gaudiya Mat's supposed to be. And these articles, there was a three-part article standing over 3 issues in 1930. It's called the Gaudiya Mat. But here the word Gaudiya Mat refers particularly to the brand new big marble temple being built in Calcutta. That was their headquarters for world preaching. And in this 3-part article, there's a whole, what's technically called an ecclesiology. Ecclesia is the Greek word for church, congregation really, but then it gets adapted by the Christians for church. And we have ecclesiastical and words like that in English. So there's an ecclesiology is the kind of theology of the religious institution. And in this 3-part article, they, in the harmonist, it's unsigned article, which means it has editorial force, very clearly it's written by Nishikant Sanyal. And there is where the term founder Acharya gets used in reference to Bhaktisiddhanta. One place. And with a small f and a capital A and no hyphen. But they were pretty careless in the magazine about those kind of things. But what this does, you see, what happened is when Bhaktisiddhanta established the Gaudiya Mat, all the issues of their magazine, of the harmonists, they had one institution that was the parent Mat. And that was the one that was called the Sri Chaitanya Mat in Mayapur. That's the place, you may have seen it if you've been to Mayapur. Bhaktisiddhanta's Samadhi is there. That's the place where Bhaktisiddhanta for 10 years chanted rounds, 64 rounds a day for 10 years. Some figure like that. Long time. When he finished, took sannyas, he established that temple, and that became the beginning of his preaching mission. That was the place. At that place. And that's where the temple was established, the Sri Chaitanya Mat. And it was the parent temple. But it was the parent temple not just because it was the first. Because they start to explain this. But anyway, every time you see the list of all their temples, they would always have this one first, the Sri Chaitanya Mat in Mayapur. And then all the others were branches of it. So that was the parent temple. And it's an interesting temple because what it shows is, if you've been there, you go around where the deities are, you can circumambulate. There's 4 shrines on the outside, facing out. Of the 4, founder acharyas. And you see Madhva, a murti of Madhva in there. And then off to his right, there's, on the side is Brahma. To the Brahma Center, and they do with all the four founder acharyas all the way around. And it's a teaching temple, and what it's teaching is Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. That each of these, which is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in the Navadvita Mahatmya, that each of the founder acharyas presented something that was vital to Lord Chaitanya's Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. And so what it teaches is that each of these contributed something to Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, something essential to what Lord Chaitanya was teaching. And but what they taught is now been synthesized and perfected in Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. So that these four founder acharyas are the precursors preparing the way for Mahaprabhu. That's in the Navadvita Mahatmya Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And that's what this temple is teaching. It's the supremacy of Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. So that's the parent temple. So in the issues of the harmonist, in 1930, is that the big marble temple. You may have heard about the big marble temple, because Prabhupada told us how Bhakti Siddhanta had met and said, I'd rather tear the marble down and print books, because people were just fighting over who would get rooms there. Because that was the beginning of the split. When the Gaudiya Math split, that was the fracture between the people in charge of the parent temple, the Sri Chaitanya Math, and the Gaudiya Math in Calcutta. That was the place where it split. And when it split, it lost its potency. So you can see the beginning of the trouble, because the point of this article on ecclesiology was to make the case that even though we are commemorating the grand opening of this temple, big, opulent temple in Calcutta. I mean, they had another temple in Calcutta earlier, but now they had this big one. They're headquarters for world preaching. And remember, Calcutta was a world city. Up until 1914, it was the headquarters of the British Raj in the east. People, sophisticated, educated Bengalis in Calcutta could feel themselves as part of a bigger project, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur really did. He was preaching through journals. That was in 19th century England, the main vehicle for intellectual discussion and development of ideas were journals. People in London would sit in coffee houses, drinking coffees, writing and reading journals and communicating with each other. That was the 19th century intellectual style. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur started journals, that was the same, he was following in that same line. He was part of what they call the Bhadralok, the educated Bengali middle class. And so he had the idea of world preaching because Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a world citizen. You want to know when globalization, well, this was a big, it's not recent. Actually, it started in the 15th century, but anyway, this is where a big step forward. So that was this magazine. And so Calcutta was a world city. Calcutta in many ways was closer to London than it was to, say, Mayapur, which was the back of beyond. It was nowheresville. But Calcutta, you were in a modern urban environment. That's what they call it. This is from that article. When they talk about this new temple, the Sri Chaitanya Mat in Calcutta, it says, I mean, the Gaudiya Mat in Calcutta, this Gaudiya Mat in Calcutta, that's the name of the temple, is the Gaudiya Mat. It is the extension of the Sri Chaitanya Mat in Mayapur into the modern urban environment. Those are their words. This temple, this parent temple, is the real temple. And the original temple, and the others are its expansions. All the other temples in the whole Gaudiya Mat are expansions of this temple. And here in this article, and to use the example of the expansions, but even though they are expansions, they are none different from the original temple. Just as a candle flame, a lamp, one lamp lit after another, is just all the branches, all the extensions are as powerful as the original. That's the example from Brahma Samhita. In other words, it's a spiritual institution. You can expand itself, and they're none different. And then it says, this article, that these, just as these temples are none different from the original temple, so also the whole institution is none different from the founder Acharya. There's the word. That's how the word founder Acharya shows up. The founder Acharya is here. They're none different from the main temple and the founder Acharya. The main temple is the seat of the founder Acharya. That's not what they're saying. This is the idea that's being conveyed is that, and they say that the original temple, the parent temple, is not the parent temple simply because it's where Lord Chaitanya appeared. It's not in Mayapur because Lord Chaitanya appeared there. It's because Mayapur is the descended spiritual realm. And in that descended spiritual realm, the temple is there together with the founder Acharya. So here's an actual spiritual philosophy. Where that temple is originally, where it really is in the spiritual world. And that place in the spiritual world they explain as Svetadweep. So the idea is that where Bhakti Siddhanta, the founder Acharya, is situated is in not just in Mayapur, but Svetadweep, in where Lord Chaitanya's pastimes are there. Because this is where it's described as the place of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and then they're shown here. Just as when Krishna appears, all of Vrindavan comes with him, so when Lord Chaitanya appears, his eternal pastimes in the spiritual world are manifest here. So that's where the temple actually is. And that's why it's important that that's the parent temple. Now we begin to understand why Srila Prabhupada, as soon as he could, got land in Mayapur. And as soon as he could, 1972, established the cornerstone of the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. And said, this is going to be our international headquarters. Our first trips there were looking around at the rice fields and the cane stalks. And where water had to come out of a pump and there was no electricity, or only occasionally, and telephones didn't work. World headquarters? This is world headquarters? Well, really, the devotees were baffled. World headquarters? Why not London? Why not New York? Why? Well, now you can understand why Prabhupada wanted to do it in Mayapur. He's following this template sent by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Very carefully. I began to understand. See, the lesson to learn from Srila Prabhupada is not how to be a spiritual master. Some people made that mistake and tried to imitate him. The lesson that Prabhupada is teaching is how to be a disciple. He's the disciple. He studied Bhaktisiddhanta and what he did with great care and attention. And when he saw that Bhaktisiddhanta's project when it split, it was over. It lost it, that energy, that drive, it was gone. It had dissipated. Certainly people going here, doing things here and there, but the other thing was gone. The split was already happening, and they were trying to repair it in the pages of the Harmonist. So it was on Prabhupada to start it all over again. He tried to keep cooperating with the Gaudiya Math. He wanted to, always till the end, he wanted to bring it together. And all his attempts failed. As soon as Prabhupada got to America, he wrote back asking for help and said, we'll cooperate together. I'll be part of your organization. They wouldn't help. They wouldn't do anything. Didn't want to. Nothing. Didn't want to cooperate. But he tried. But they had lost it when it split like that. So that's why Srila Prabhupada started all over again. He realized a word he used in one place about the fragments of the Gaudiya Math, useless. And so therefore, he came and he didn't, people just called him Swamiji in the beginning, his disciples, Swamiji, Swamiji. And he just happened to mention that Swamiji once in a conversation was a kind of a second-rate title. Oh, well, what can we call you? He said, are there better titles? He said, yes, the spiritual master is called Guru Dev or Prabhupada. Oh, can we call you Prabhupada? And then he said, all right. You can see it's a recorded conversation. That's how he did it. Waited, then we call you, oh, all right. So when Prabhupada started, he didn't get any cooperation. He realized it wasn't going to, and so therefore, he has an organization called International Society for Krishna Consciousness, very modern, with a hip acronym, ISKCON, like that. That's what he did. And then he very early on in written thing, the second issue of Back to Godhead magazine, about 1966, or 65 maybe. he has the term founder Acharya for himself. And it appears a couple of times in Back to Godhead, disappears, comes back, but then at a certain point, Prabhupada insisted upon it. It became vital that he be always and in the first issues of Back to Godhead, you kind of see it like you see it now. You know, the way it's prescribed by Prabhupada. And what I see that what he did was he had to reconstitute the movement almost from the beginning. What Bhaktisiddhanta was going to do. Remember, Bhaktisiddhanta was going to go first to England, then to America. I think Prabhupada came to America. I heard one place that's where the ship was going. That's, you know, it was the first opportunity. Anyway, Krishna got him here in America. And of course, as soon as he could, the first devotees he sent everywhere else, he sent them to London, where they met the Beatles and so on. And the Hare Krishna mantra was on the top of the pops, literally. It was a #1 song for quite a while in England and Europe, when Harrison recorded helped them record it. They're going around to big rock concerts called the Hare Krishna Temple. That was their name of their group. So that's how it's. So now, Prabhupada takes this founder Acharya. So that's a bold move, but you can see in the harmony when it's mentioned in that one article by Nishikant Sanyal. Then later on in 1936, again Nishikant Sanyal writes an article under his own name where he refers to Bhaktisiddhanta as founder Acharya. Somewhere a few months before he passed away, again referred to it. My conclusion is that since Nishikant Sanyal and Prabhupada worked so close together, and they worked on this book, I mean, Bhaktisiddhanta went over every page of that book, the Sri Krishna Chaitanya book. And they were like this, as far as editing, as far as English language writing goes. That when Nishikant Sanyal uses that term, that it was being prepared for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was planning to go to the West, and when he would have established that temple in London, then he would have been awarded that title. See, in the way it worked, the etiquette, the standard behavior for titles generally, is that you didn't just take a title. There was a ceremony. They did this every year in the Gaudiya Math. They had a ceremony where Bhaktisiddhanta would give titles to his disciples. They would come up, he would glorify them, and he would award them a title. Like Nishikant Sanyal was known as Bhakti Sudhakar. That was a title given to him by Bhakti, ceremoniously by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When Prabhupada got the title Bhaktivedanta, there was a ceremony, and he was awarded the title. And that's the way it was done. So I believe that that's what was the plan when the movement would have spread to the West. And what makes me convinced is about Prabhupada's pranam mantra. They asked him again, could we have a special mantra just for you? Otherwise, he was just given the general mantra for any guru. And so, Prabhupada, yes, you can. Here's a special mantra. And he gave him the mantra. So it was apparently written by Prabhupada, because nobody else knew Sanskrit. So what does it say? It's about Srila Prabhupada. And what's Prabhupada's name in that mantra? Huh? Yes, Saraswata. I mean, it's in the vocative case because I'm offering obeisances unto Namaste Saraswate Deve. So the word, sometimes you hear Namaste Saraswati Deve, but it's not the goddess. But in Sanskrit grammar, there's a way of making a patronymic. Just like in English, Johnson means as a last name as somebody who's the son of John. It's a patronymic. Thompson, son of Tom. These are patronymics. In Ireland, the Mick prefix is a patronymic. So, or Ivanovich in Russian, the son of Ivan, So this is a patronymic in Sanskrit. Or matronymic. Partha is the son of Prita. You strengthen the first noun, make it long, make it heavier, vriddhi. Saraswati, so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, right? So that first thing becomes a long Saraswati. And then you change it to the A declension. So it ends in an A. So Saraswata, and then because it's in the locative case where you're offering obeisances, that A becomes an E. Saraswate Deve. So Prabhupada's name is, he is the son or disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. That's who's doing it. He's not here anymore. I'm carrying on. And I'm doing it as the disciple. I'm just doing just what he did. I am doing it that way. And then what is Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane? He's preaching in the Western countries the mission of Lord Chaitanya. That's also what the four founder acharyas did. Especially in India, the West was also known to be full of Buddhism and Mayavada. So that's what he did, what the founder, those four founder acharyas in that book did. Defeated Mayavad philosophy. Because what are the Western countries full of? Nirvishesha and Shunyavada. That's what they're full of. So he's doing the work of the founder acharyas. I'd like to do some more research that maybe we may find in the papers of Sridhar Maharaj or somebody, Prabhupada's godbrother, where they were actually preparing a mantra like that for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who didn't do it. That was something to look for. It may not have ever been published, but anyway. But anyway, that's where. So this is Prabhupada the disciple. How to be a disciple. You can study how Srila Prabhupada followed his spiritual master and carried on, picked up just where he left off. Unfortunately, they wouldn't join with him. The original parent mat was in the hands of somebody who was quite inimical to the efforts of our Srila Prabhupada. And in fact was inimical to his own spiritual master. When there was a lawsuit, that person, we know now because we have some more information, actually went to court to say that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's sannyas wasn't legitimate as part of his claim to the big lawsuit that went on for 40 years that Prabhupada discussed. So they were not even, in a way, they were also inimical to their own spiritual master. So therefore, Prabhupada, our world headquarters. And what is that world headquarters? It's a big temple. And what is it teaching? Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta is teaching it in a historical way, chronologically, Prabhupada is teaching it in a cosmological and philosophical way. That Krishna, although he transcends the world, he also includes it. Because as Prabhupada put it, Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, he describes something, condensing a little bit, nothing is different from Krishna, yet Krishna is different from everything. There's nothing but Krishna. This is another place, Prabhupada says, nothing but Krishna, but nothing is Krishna save and except his own primordial personality. That's Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. So we are showing the universe, which is described as the first step in God realization, to understand how not all of this is Krishna's energy and therefore is none different from Krishna. And nature is divine, and that divinity around us will come out once we understand that everything is to be used in Krishna's service and not for sense gratification. When the veil of sense gratification or Maya is removed, then you'll see everything in Krishna and Krishna and everything. If you want that vision, that's how to get it. Not by some artificial means. So anyway, this is how Prabhupada carries on. And so we should appreciate him as the extension of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, as the servant. And as he did, we should do. The big mistake is the failure of cooperation. And Prabhupada said in his last days, memorably, your love will be shown for me, will be shown by how much you cooperate together to spread this movement. So we need to also follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. We don't want to have to start ISKCON all over again. This is really, and what to study about Srila Prabhupada particularly is his commitment and devotion to the order of his spiritual master. To make the order of the spiritual master one with your heart as your life and soul, and to execute it in that way. This is also our service to Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acarya. And you will find out that if we do like that, everything that people who got from Prabhupada's direct association will continue. Because this movement is none different from Srila Prabhupada. This movement is also his extension or his bodily form. And you'll also discover one last thing before we have some time for questions, that Prabhupada's books are there, and they are very, very special books. They are founder Acharya books. And that you will discover, as most of us have, you pick up the last time you read the second canto of Bhagavatam was maybe 5 years ago. You've been practicing Krishna conscious seriously for 5 years. When you open it up again after 5 years, it's a whole nother book. There's all kinds of stuff in there you didn't see before. Prabhupada has there, he's encoded so much information and instructions that you cannot see until you are advanced enough to look into it. There's a 19th century German writer who had this aphorism. He says, a book is like a mirror. If an ass looks in, an angel won't look out. That's just about any kind of literature, but when it comes to Srila Prabhupada, what we can see is how much we've been purified by following Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And as we become pure, so we will have, although Srila Prabhupada may be our grand disciple or even grand spiritual master, or great spiritual master, whatever, he will always be there in this form and in the form of his movement, so that we all have a direct relationship with him. And that's the meaning of his position as founder Acharya. Okay, so any questions or comments? We have a few minutes.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah?
Ritvik persons who we refer to as Ritviks, who believe that Prabhupada's the only, guru. One of our criticisms of them is that that if they were right, then that would mean that Srila Prabhupada is impotent because he wasn't able to make other pure devotees.
Sure.
So now to my question, so Srila, you were talking about how Srila Prabhupada, he came to the West, he asked for God brothers in the Gaudiya Math to help him, and they didn't. And at times we've heard Srila Prabhupada complain about them, at other times offer great respects to them as well.
Yeah.
So my question is...
He had mixed feelings.
So my question though is, how, if we, one of the ways that we recognize Srila Prabhupada's great potency is that he did in fact make so many elevated devotees, such as so many who are here today even, then what does that say about our most revered great grand spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if we have Srila Prabhupada and yet his there weren't God brothers who were also disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta who were inspired by Bhaktisiddhanta to cooperate with Srila Prabhupada. What does that say? How can we understand that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't inspire them to cooperate with Prabhupada?
They went as far as they could, I suppose. One thing that Prabhupada did was give all those disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur who didn't finish up their spiritual life and died in a not very advanced position, some place to go where they could keep making advancement. So we're the successor of the Gaudiya Math in more than one way. Prabhupada told us that as Krishna consciousness is a continuation from the last life. And I thought in the beginning, hey, that means in my last life I was a devotee. I was really happy about that. And then I realized, no, it's not it means I blew it in my last life. Must have created some big offenses and things like that, and only got so far. So this is a great service that Srila Prabhupada did to all his God brothers, would give them a place to continue. Right? So, and Bhaktisiddhanta, there's the ideal, and there's the best that can be achieved under the circumstances. And Prabhupada himself said that if I can make one pure devotee disciple, that will have been worth it. So that's... Because, you know, if there's only one, everything will go on. Even if Prabhupada was the only one. But he told us also, you know, all my God brothers are going back to Godhead. He just didn't say when.
I have a question.
Yeah. I
The-
guess that was nasty, wasn't it? He didn't.
Two things. The theme of this gathering is the petals of ISKCON's lotus.
The what?
The theme, the title of this
Yeah.
event is the petals of ISKCON's lotus. So in one sense, what you've described is the corolla that from which the petals have come,
Mm-hmm.
the founder Acarya. And yesterday evening, Tamahar Prabhu guided us through a discussion of the 7 purposes of ISKCON, the corporation.
Hmm.
Would you like to, you know, speak a little bit about the 7 purposes of ISKCON and how they connect to Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktisiddhanta's mission? And, you know, it's a statement by our founder Acarya about what ISKCON is, which is his body.
Yeah, somebody, but they don't come to my mind in sequence right now. Why don't you say each of the 7 purposes?
Oh, yes,
Do you have? I don't have. I can't even get online.
Well,
So.
the first one is propagate.
Yeah. You know, it starts out propagating.
I should memorize them, shouldn't
propagating
I? Yeah.
Krishna consciousness of the world, and then talking about specifically
Yeah.
the Sankirtan movement, according to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. To do this,
The second one is, the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita embody, the personality of Krishna, and Prabhupada wanted to see that furthered. And then the Sankirtan movement, bring the devotees together,
Right.
and so establish temples, then teach the principles of simple living, and then, for all the above mentioned, distribute books,
Right.
print and
Yeah.
disseminate magazines, periodicals, journals.
Yeah, that was also the Gaudiya Math. That was exactly where that comes from. I mean, it's amazing how Prabhupada studied what Bhaktisiddhanta did. Prabhupada's so smart. He really just looked at him and looked at what he did, saw how it was done, saw what was working, what wasn't working, and it's far out. Very, very, very smart. And then could actually make it happen, which is... And at an old age, too. I mean, I know what it's like now, I just had to move from one place, and it was like such an upheaval, and Prabhupada left India. And it was like... Yeah. No, that's very good. It really is true about those 7 purposes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and those 7 purposes, yeah, very nicely done. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Jai, okay. So that was so profound, and for me, I think what I will be meditating on all day long is that Prabhupada's lesson wasn't that how to be a spiritual master, but how to be a disciple. That was just a really, really awakening point for me. And I think to the question that this young man asked, I have 7 siblings, And I could go to them and say, you know what, you all are bringing a shame on our mother and our father, and you're not acting nicely. But if my children were disrespectful to them, I would want to beat
Yeah,
them
that's
up.
right.
So I think what Prabhupada did was so expert in showing that these were his god brothers and he could chastise them or speak to
Yeah.
them, but we had to be very, very careful how we looked at his god brothers. And for us as neophyte devotees, a lot of times it's hard for us to respect a lot of different people at a lot of different levels, but I think that is the lesson of spiritual life. Prabhupada is such a unique devotee, and he had so much love for his guru that he was willing to give everything and anything to see his vision. And although maybe some of his god brothers didn't have that vision or that ability, they were still respectable in that way. So I think we shouldn't forget that.
Yeah,
And
it's a
thank
good,
you.
it's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. One thing is coming to my mind as you said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj translated in English and they wanted to send books to England for the intelligent and very high class people. So now I'm thinking maybe they are speculators or Gyanis. And Prabhupada says that Gyanis can speculate for many, many lifetime, but they cannot become a devotee. So what was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj's thinking regarding that?
Not necessarily Gyanis, but it's just that the culture of Srimad Bhagavatam and the culture of Krishna consciousness is very highly elevated. And, you know, for spiritual life, you need to become in the mode of goodness, sattva guna. And so those people generally who are in sattva guna are more educated, interested in knowledge, not just interested in making money and, you know, satisfying the senses. So he was expecting people like that. And that's not what came. It's amazing to me that when the people that showed up for Srila Prabhupada were just these young kids, and you read Prabhupada's description of hippies, lazy, unemployed, lying in the street, drug intoxicated. You know, these are the people that came to Srila Prabhupada with long hair. When they took off their blue jeans, they'd stand up by themselves. And Prabhupada's god brothers would have walked away. In fact, they did. You know, I mean, Ban Maharaj was the Western preacher who went to England and was delivering lectures. I mean, they were pretty active when they first went to England and Europe also. In the Harmonists, you read reports like this, sent back, you know, because they were preaching in Germany too. It says, next month we are having Vyasa Puja for Srila Prabhupada in Berlin. And here Dr. Goebbels has kindly agreed to inaugurate the ceremony because the Nazi party came into power the same year they went there, you know. So you know all hell was going to break loose. If you wonder why there was a 30-year break between the Bhaktisiddhanta's effort and when Prabhupada came, well, they had to pause from mostly for World War II. You know, I mean, all hell was literally about to break loose. So, anyway, they were thinking like this. And Ban Maharaj was in 1972. He was in Canada at a university there. He was still going and preaching. He would give lectures to academic people. That's what he would do. So they were doing that. But it was not very effective for spreading Krishna consciousness. But it was later Ban Maharaj who began to, when some of Prabhupada's disciples went to India, he reinitiated them. So that was like pretty nasty thing to do. But Ban Maharaj had also offended Bhaktisiddhanta. He did like some 10-year-long penance or something. Because when he came back, because he was recalled from London by Bhaktisiddhanta, and Bhaktisiddhanta wouldn't even see him, and actually referred to him as Banasura. He was so mad at him. I don't know exactly what happened, but anyway, that was that was what happened, like that. So Prabhupada just took these people that the Gaudiya Math wouldn't have anything to do with, and somehow was able to change everything. But he didn't lose interest in, he started the Bhaktivedanta Institute when he could. He was happy to have disciples who had academic ability and were educated. He wanted that to go on. It wasn't that he was neglectful of it. He wasn't, when I became a devotee, I was just finished up 3 years of graduate course in religious studies. I came to the temple, the devotees told me to quit. I should just stop. I thought, after 3 years of work, maybe I should do something, write a doctoral dissertation. They said, no, you should quit. And they showed me what Prabhupada had written. They said, the modern educational institutions are the slaughterhouse of the young. I should quit. And I thought, well, maybe, I shouldn't do that. I put so much work in. So I asked Nayana Brahma, the temple president, would you inquire from Prabhupada what I should do? And so the word came back that Prabhupada wanted me to keep on going. He wanted me to go get a PhD. And the devotees were like really surprised to hear it. And then they thought for a minute and says, no, you should quit. He's just telling you that because you're attached. Because that idea of dropping out, was a totally hippie idea, and we had imported it into ISKCON, But that's the way it was in those days. So Prabhupada had his plans also. He wanted Bhagavatam was a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society, he wrote. And that's what we're trying to do. Anything else?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
How to follow the spiritual master but not imitate the spiritual master?
Imitate the spiritual master means you want to be great. Follow the spiritual master means you want to learn how to become small. In spiritual life, the way up is the way down. If you want to make advancement, you have to become humble. It's just the opposite of the material world. And if you take the way up, you'll find out you're becoming more and more fallen. So spiritual life, to advance in spiritual life is to advance in humility. And it takes a while to get a taste for humility. Because and it's not that great devotees, you read Krishnadas Kaviraj, anyone who says my name goes to hell, This is how he feels. And sometimes that seeking after humility, Nietzsche called Christianity a slave religion and all that stuff, and a religion of resentment. But it's not that we're masochists or that we like humility for its own sake. It's just that one discovers that when humility increases, love for Krishna increases. And so it's the taste of love for Krishna that you want to increase, that again you want to become more and more humble. So that's just the laws of spiritual life. And our culture, material culture, is the opposite. And that's why it's called material. Everybody's got their own God project going. I am the greatest. I am the most wonderful. I am the best of this. I am the best of that. You read the internet lately or use Facebook, you know. That's what everybody, all the God projects out there, huh? So we have a disciple project. And so from Prabhupada, learn how to be a disciple. That's his big lesson. And the other part will take care of itself. Yeah?
Hare Krishna, Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu. I wanted to ask you, when you explain Prabhupada's non-different than ISKCON, or ISKCON being basically like Prabhupada's body, and the idea that sometimes you're exposed, especially with some Prabhupada disciples that, particular Prabhupada disciples to be more accurate, that profess the idea of serving Srila Prabhupada outside the institution of ISKCON. And also in terms of the tendency that is there to try to serve Prabhupada, also not only on Prabhupada disciples, some Prabhupada disciples claiming that, but also followers of Srila Prabhupada that takes this idea that I can serve Srila Prabhupada outside the structure of the institution. If you can speak a little bit about that.
Well, you can serve him outside the structure of the institution if you follow the principles, but you'll serve him better in the structure of the institution. Why have an organization? Why have cooperation? If there's a job to be done and 5 people undertake that task separately, there's 5 people doing something. If those 5 people work together and organize, those 5 people can become, like, say, 25 people, just by cooperation. It's a force multiplier. That's what cooperation does. So you can do something separately. And Prabhupada, those people that can cooperate, he didn't say stop practicing Krishna consciousness, do your best. But if you care about people, if you want to save as many people as possible, and then if you can understand that 5 people working together has the effect of 25, why shouldn't you work together if you cared about people? If you felt some urgency that let me deliver as many people as I can, you'll work together. I mean, Sankirtan means you do it together. That's the Yuga Dharma. So it's very, very important not to give up working together. I know it's hard, believe me. And sometimes, you have to step back a few minutes, take a breath before you dive back in again. But it's worth it. And Prabhupada, I have to say, even though he was separated from his godbrothers and he never stopped trying to get together. One of his last acts was to make the Bhaktivedanta Charity Trust, to try to make a forum for working together with his godbrothers. He did it. He didn't never quit. But he was careful. Okay? By the way, I also want to say this. Prabhupada mentioned in a letter about the spiritual world, he said, we shall have another ISKCON there. You may think, oh no, but it'll be a better ISKCON. But that would be, if we have another ISKCON there, that would be in Swetadweep, that would be in Chaitanya Leela. You know, because some of, even Chaitanya's disciples, Murari Gupta was a Ram Bhakta. So he's not going to be in Krishna Leela. He's going to be in Ram. So, you know, there were people in Chaitanya Leela from all different sorts of, you know, places of relationships with Krishna and different forms of Krishna. So when we have another ISKCON, and I know there's Ram Bhaktas in ISKCON too, but when we have another ISKCON there, that other ISKCON will be in Chaitanya Leela. And that's where Srila Prabhupada also will be in Chaitanya Leela, and that's our Sankirtan party in Chaitanya Leela, is the ISKCON that's there. And I think that between that ISKCON there and the ISKCON here, there's probably some back and, you know, some are going back there and some may have to come back down and help out again and go back, you know, and, you know. So I don't think, what I think the connecting place, if you want to know where those two ISKCONs are most visibly connected, that's the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium in Mayapur. That's where they connect. Because that Mayapur, I think of that temple as a portal. You go in, you go out through the universe, and you go, you know, that's the portal. And it's interesting, you know, I was on the GBC, we were trying to, ever since I was on the GBC, we were planning for that temple. And we were going to have it in different places. Where it ended up is actually very same place where Prabhupada established the foundation. And it happens to be right across the street, so to speak, from Prabhupada's Pushpa Samadhi. So he's there right at the entrance, looking at it. So that to me is the connecting place. I mean, you can connect other ways, but to make it visible, that's where the visible connection is. Okay? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.